All right. All right. Now we're on. Hi, Nicole.
Hi, Charlie.
How are you?
I am so excited to be here.
Last time I talked to you, you were in Germany. I take it you're
I
back,
know. I am
right?
back, and you're still wearing that great hat.
You know, the silver hat. It's not a gray hat, it's a silver hat. And like I said when I first put it
That
on,
was a little invalidating. You just said it's not a great. I said it's. You could say thank you.
oh, thank you for noticing my gray hat.
You're welcome. You're welcome. Now you can say whatever you want. I feel
No, I was
bad
just
here.
going to say, like I said at the beginning of the very first podcast on which I wore it, I still don't know exactly why I wear it. And even when I put it on, I'm thinking, what the hell am I doing? I'm putting on this stupid silver hat. But it is what it is, and it seems to work. You know, it's working. I'm still,
Brings me joy.
it brings you joy. So it's working, and it's keeping me alive. You know, as far as because I'm still alive.
It's a good thing.
So anyway, so we're going to be starting in just a minute. Anything that I should know about what's happening with you?
Oh, just that I have a little bit of shoulder pain right now, and I would really love a massage. Just
Oh,
thought I'd throw
okay.
that out.
Well, so we'll
No,
see
that's
if
about it.
somebody drops by and does that while we're doing the podcast.
Wants to offer it up. No, that's good. No, that's it.
And all I have to say is, let's see, we did the last one last Friday, yeah, and then I took off on a road trip to Washington D.C.
Ah,
with my son Ruben, and we drove to D.C. on Friday, which is the day the abortion decision came down from the Supreme
mhm.
Court, but we didn't know, and that wasn't why we were going. It makes it look like I'm a very radical activist that I went all the way to D.C. to
It
be in
sure
the
does.
protest, because then when we arrived, that's what was going on, and the next morning we got up and we went right to the Supreme Court and we hung out there for a good while and were among the people there. And it was really very moving and very intense and a little bit scary uh,
Mm.
with the amount of police presence that was there and the how angry people were. But yeah, so we saw Washington D.C. We went around, we listened to some music and hung around, and then we came up to Philadelphia for a day, and we went to like the Liberty Bell and those places.
Oh, wow.
We went to the Lincoln Memorial, and I was reading on the wall of the Lincoln Memorial. If anybody who's listening has been there, it's unbelievably beautiful memorial
Oh,
just to
my
walk
favorite.
there. Is it?
When I was a little girl, I mean, I wanted to be president back in the day. It was before the world had
Well, now you're old
transformed. But the
enough.
Lincoln, now I'm old enough and too wise to share that ambition with my younger self. But no, the Lincoln Memorial I thought was just the most inspired and inspiring place I'd ever seen.
Something about it, and of course
Yeah.
the view that it has, but how big it is, and how big
Yeah.
Lincoln is, and then on the walls are engraved
Oh,
parts of his speeches. By the way, speaking about dialectics and what we talked about last time, one of the things that was really interesting was to see one of his speeches around the time of Emancipation Proclamation
hmm.
was that he was saying he found a synthesis in talking about this incredibly divisive thing, the thing that tore the country apart.
Yeah.
Slave versus no slave, expand slave into new territories or not. And he's sort of giving a speech about that. And he's saying, look, what I want is to hold this union together. A house divided against itself cannot
Yeah.
stand, hit
Oh.
that famous line. And he said, what I want is to hold the union together. He said, if that means that it's all slave, this is a little earlier for him,
Hmm.
then so be it. If that means that there's no slaves, so be it. If that means it's half slave and half, then so be it. But what's important to me is that we're all in this together. And that was just a different synthesis than being on one side or the other of that particular argument. At least it sounded like that, though he gravitated rather rapidly after that to being on one side more than the
Yeah.
other. But it just the way he wrote was just brilliant.
Oh, it was poetic and it was elevated. I think it elevated the vision of what America was and could be.
Yeah, yeah.
And this idea of the United States as, a place where difference could also exist with a shared vision, with cooperation, and to really to hold that tension of these individual states with individual priorities that would kind of subjugate those, singular desires to be a part of this larger whole.
Yeah, and even though at the time slaves couldn't vote, women couldn't vote,
Yes.
there was all this rhetoric that forecast the future of everybody voting and everybody supposedly being an equal participant of democracy. And there was a feel of democracy then that just articulating it, even though it was a very imperfect at the time and continued imperfect. But anyway, it was just a touching thing to go there and then to go to Philadelphia and the Liberty Bell and so on.
Did you happen to see any of the most recent January 6 hearings?
Yeah. Yeah, I've watched a fair amount of it. Certainly the one with Cassidy Hutchinson, that was just unbelievable. I just kept thinking, this 25-year-old woman is sitting there knowing full well that she's going to get death threats for the next many years of her life if she makes it. And she gets up there and she's had such poise and she articulated the level of courage that she had.
I was very proud to be an American watching her. I felt like, wow, this is the best of us. And I mean, even the whole proceedings, but really, her capacity as someone that, as she said, worked to represent Trump's candidacy and the best of the work that he'd done, that she could just be so candid, forthright, and also express her disappointment and disillusion. It was really, I was just very, very proud in all of what was unfolding there, and proud of her. So I thought it was a pretty remarkable expression of democracy and of the institutions, what we're capable of when we decide to be.
Well, with all of the threats to democracy that are going on now, at least from my not just my perspective, but lots of people, but so with all of the threats, with all of the recent decisions that the Supreme Court has made, which has really been not surprising, but shocking anyway, some of the decisions, including climate change related decisions, of allowing for more guns in certain states where there weren't guns, as many guns where they had restrictions before, making the decisions about states and how they can regulate their own elections, maybe with legislatures overriding judiciary. It's just there's a lot of threats going on. And then, of course, there's the stuff going on in Ukraine. And then there's the stuff going on in the economy. And then there's these hearings that we've been watching. And when you consider all of that, I just thought we should now start this podcast with a chance to just take a breath and to calm down our nervous systems a little bit. There's only so much you can do in a brief time, but I think that there are ways to breathe that a lot of people teach, a lot of people have learned, and maybe people listening to this podcast have learned. But I just want us to do something that really includes for my own nervous system, because, you and I have something coming up in this podcast that makes me nervous. And so everybody's going through a lot of difficult times. So here's what I want to do. There's a lot of different ways to talk about this particular breathing exercise, and I'm sure everybody knows different versions of it. I'm just going to call it the 5-5-5 breathing exercise. And what that means is that if you can slow down your breathing and breathe slowly enough that it settles your autonomic nervous system, that it activates your parasympathetic nervous system, that it slows down your fight-flight nervous system, your sympathetic nervous system, that if you can do that for even a few minutes, and we'll just do 2 minutes of this for now, but you really can use something as readily available as the breath to kind of calm down and to get ready for whatever you're doing next. So the 5-5-5 means that when we begin this, you count to 5 while you take an in-breath. So I'm going 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 while I'm breathing, and I'm focusing on each count while I'm breathing in And then I breathe out 5. Again, keeping it sort of rhythmically slow. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, breathing out. And then hold it for 5, a count of 5. It's a slightly different version of what other people might know, and a little bit different than sometimes is taught within DBT, though it's the same idea. And it is resonance frequency breathing is the technical term for this.
Got
It
it. So I'm
helps
inhaling for 5, exhaling for 5, holding for 5, holding out for 5. Okay, got it.
Right, right. And so we'll just do that. And so I'm not going to count out loud. Everybody count to yourselves. Just give yourself this opportunity to take advantage of just a couple of minutes of time to see if you can sort of slightly de-stress what's probably a stressed nervous system if you're in the country I'm in. Okay,
in a
so
human body.
right, and so in about 2 minutes, I'll stop us. But so just get yourselves sort of settled in a way where you can sort of stay relatively still with your body, and where you don't have to be moving around and you're not looking at other things, and you can close your eyes if you'd like, or you could keep your eyes open and just look down in front of you at some neutral spot if you'd like. But just get settled into your body and let's feel your body to come down into a settled posture. And let's begin with inhaling to a count of 5, exhaling to 5, and then hold it for 5. And I'll tell us when we're going to stop. Okay, let's stop that.
That was great.
Yeah, it really, there's something about that extra holding it for 5 that I find is really adds. It just allows one to settle if you don't lose your breath too much, And 5-5-5 is so easy to remember compared to some of the formulas that people put out, like 4, 6, and 7, and all these different things. So.
No, that was lovely. I feel much more present.
Okay, so let me say what we're going to be doing, and you could add something if you'd like to this,
Sure.
Nicole. Nicole and I thought we can talk about dialectics, we can talk about social and political issues of the day, we can talk about being in psychological hell in all kinds of ways, and all of those are part of this podcast. But there's another thing that we thought we could do is kind of be it as opposed to talk about it. And to be it, we thought, okay, so let's have some scenario that's coming up. In this case, let's say it's in a psychotherapy session, and I am Nicole's psychotherapist, and I've seen her for a few months. And during that time, she's become pregnant. And I know that. That's been somewhat of a topic of conversation. And so now she's wrestling with an issue about what to do about this pregnancy. So that's where we're going to be, like in a therapy session. What should she do? So I'll just say, those of you who are real Marsha Linehan adherents, people who study DBT and study Marsha Linehan, Marsha talked about there being 3 types of therapy sessions. One type was the usual type that most people know in DBT, which is solving a problem, like you're having urges to harm yourself, or you're binging and purging, or you're have an addiction, and you're trying to solve these problems in order to build a life worth living. There's a second type, which is just heart-to-heart talks, which is every once in a while, not too frequently in therapy, that really the therapist and patient each let down their guard and just have a talk about whatever's going on, including in the relationship. And the third one, the kind this is going to be, is decision-making sessions. Like, should I do this or should I do that? And so we're going to do that kind, which is less highlighted when you learn about DBT, but still can involve all the same concepts and even some of the same skills and principles. So that's where we're going to go. And what we thought we would do is do this for about 20 minutes or so, and then leave time after that for each of us to reflect on what happened and what some of our personal experiences were, which, when you're in therapy, sometimes you don't get a chance to do that right after a therapy session. So that's what we're going to do. And I just have to tell you that though we know the basic scenario, the outline, what I just told you, we don't know a heck of a lot more. So it's kind of unscripted. That's why I said I'm a little nervous about this.
I'm pretty nervous too.
All right. Well, who knows what will happen. All right. So Nicole, how are you today? It's good to see you.
Yeah, it's good to see you too. I am, how am I? I feel I'm unsettled. I'm a little bit, I'm ruminating a lot. As you know, Lucas is really excited about this baby, and
right.
Ever since, I don't know that it was just what happened with Roe, but ever since the decision came out, I've really felt pretty strongly that I want to terminate my pregnancy.
Remind me how many weeks you are into it, if you know that clearly.
I'm 16 weeks now.
Okay.
And I was always ambivalent about kids. And I think that I'm realizing now just how much of this was about Lucas and making him happy. And I mean, it's not that there's anything wrong with this. I think it could have been fine, but it wasn't ever a burning desire of mine.
No, if I remember right, it wasn't like something planned either on your part, that you interrupted your birth control at a certain point, but that wasn't because you were planning to have a child.
No,
right?
It was because my periods were awful, and I was planning on switching to something more homeopathic. It was totally unplanned, and I mean, I thought if I was going to even consider kids, it would be a few years from now, maybe. Maybe. And even then, it was never something like I was like, oh, I should be aware of time or any of that. I mean, I love what I'm doing. I love my life, and now
it's really true that, and I've gotten to know you pretty well over these recent months. Now that I think of it, though it hadn't crossed my mind exactly like this before, you've never really talked about, oh boy, I'm going to be raising a baby. I'm going to be having a child. I'm going to be doing that whole thing and knitting a family together. And that just hasn't been in your main vocabulary. I've just assumed, okay, well, she and
Doing
Lucas
what
are happy
people
about
do
this.
around this time.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. The years go by and you think, well, I should get pregnant and I do have this partner and he and I are pretty good together, so I guess we'll do this, right? But actually,
I don't want to be married, which is already a thing we went through. I don't want to be married.
That's right.
I mean, I love him. He's wonderful. I think we have a lovely situation, but I don't know what it is to have a baby. I mean, I don't want to change diapers. My sister, she has 2 kids and they're adorable for like an hour. I know for some people they say once you're never ready until you do it. And I guess I was thinking that would be true for me maybe. And I know a lot of people, it's transformed them in a good way. My mother thinks that I'll finally grow up. I don't know that. I don't know. And this is one of the things that's really been on my mind. But, if Roe hadn't come out the way that it did,
Mm-hmm.
I probably would have just gone on and had the baby.
But say more of how did the Roe decision, which is a decision that, I mean, you're in New York.
Yeah.
So that Roe decision
it's not
turns it over to
impacting.
the state. So it doesn't say anything has to change in New York, but it's
Right.
impacted your thinking. How did it impact your thinking?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think about, I went to an all-girls school. I'm not, I don't know what it means to be a feminist, really, other than I know I have opportunities that my mother's generation and certainly my grandmother's generation didn't have. And I know that I have opportunities that now many women at the rest of this country don't have. And for me, I guess one of my values is to really to be conscious of and to live into like the fullest expression of my humanness, to really lean into the opportunities that are available to me and like what makes my heart sing, because that's what it is to be an individual in a free country, I guess, and to not take any of it for granted. Because
that's interesting. So because
what
what makes your heart sing is not that imagination of the 1 hour or plus one, or going beyond 1 hour with a baby and changing diapers and being with family, and that's what makes your heart sing has been the work you've talked about and
it's my company. It's my vision for what I'm building, and it's our environment. It's what's I think having children when we're as overpopulated as we are. Is inherently something that requires responsible people to think carefully about, it's not just like an entitlement. It's not something that I think we should just do because it's what people do. There are so many ways to have a rich, meaningful life. And I don't know. I don't believe everyone should be a parent. I believe everyone can do what is appropriate and right for them. And I also think that, like, as an educated woman that has so many opportunities available to me to choose to, bear a child and like move towards a traditional role, when so many people are now forced to take that path.
Right.
To me, it's just like why would I relinquish this great opportunity I have to forge my own destiny and to, forgive me for saying so, but to kind of, tie myself down with that responsibility, because it is responsibility, and again, I'm not judging women who do this. Many of my friends have kids, and bless them. I think that's amazing. I just don't know
Nicole,
that that's what I want.
It's not just that you don't know what you want. You've just articulated what you want. It's consistent with what you've said before. The outlier in what's going on with you is that you're pregnant. And so this, fetus is growing in you.
Well, I'm pregnant and I have a partner that's dying to have kids.
No, to me, that's the one thing you're bringing. That's the wrinkle.
Yeah.
Or the wrinkle. That's the giant wrinkle in the situation. Because I think if it wasn't for him, or your concern about him, or if it wasn't that he wanted kids, you'd probably be saying, Roe reminds me that I'm able to terminate a pregnancy, and so I'm going to go ahead and do it.
I would already have had the abortion.
You would have already had it. So you're already holding out because you don't want to disappoint, or you don't want to...
Well, I don't think that I think that the fact that I came this far along, I got swept up in our relationship and his enthusiasm, and I really allowed, his vision of what could be to eclipse the truth that I know what I want and what I don't want. I got caught up in a fairy tale fantasy, the contagion, and the maybe it could be me too. Maybe this is what I should want. I got lost in that, and it's just gotten so clarified for me, because I just don't. I'm like, I know I don't want it, and I also know it's going to be a nightmare to go through this conversation, and I don't want, and what I'm thinking, which I feel really uncomfortable about, and I feel, as I'm sitting here talking about being in a posture of great integrity, I'm thinking about just going ahead with it before I say anything, and then lying and just saying I miscarried. And because I feel like that's the easiest way to keep our relationship on great terms, and also to just get myself out of this. But of course, that's lying, and
let me comment on that. You've been in DBT skills.
Yeah.
You've been through some things, and you've been through the interpersonal skills.
Yeah.
And you may remember that there are these skills for how to manage a relationship.
Yeah.
How to how to have a conversation in a relationship. So we should not ignore that.
Is this the dear man thing?
The dear man thing.
Oy, yeah.
Where you have three different priorities when you're going to have a conversation. Mm-hmm. And the third of the three is, how do you strengthen your self-respect? And one of those, and there's 4 skills that have to do with how do you strengthen your self-respect in a relationship. And they go to the acronym FAST, or FAST. And one is to be fair. So that means being fair to yourself and fair to the other person.
Okay, wait. But Charlie, being fair to the other person assumes that the person and his whole family system, because, his mother lives nearby, and his mother is like an octopus. And it's just like,
my God. Between your mother and her mother.
I know, right?
Or his
right?
mother.
Talk
My
about
God,
enmeshment.
you're living at the bottom of the sea.
Exactly. I can barely breathe already.
Right.
No, she's intense. And and she and he are very close. And I think that being fair to both of them assumes that there's some perspective there, that they're able to see outside their own beliefs about what's right, what's true, what's good, that they even can conceive of. The whole thing when we were supposed to get married, and I was like, I don't really want to get married. That was such a that was really, really corrosive, because it was like I was somehow dishonoring his masculinity, and by not wanting to take his name and wanting to get married and all of those things. Where, that we got through that was
Yeah, but
kind of
look,
a
you're
miracle.
you're misunderstanding some. You're taking something I said just about about being fair. Let me just say about being fair.
Okay.
Being fair doesn't mean you make a decision that he wants. Being
Okay.
fair doesn't mean that you please him and his octopus mother. You know, being fair means that you take his position into account
Hmm.
and you think of how to be fair. So if, for instance, you were going to decide to not have the baby
Hmm.
and you were going to have a conversation with him about it, one feature of that that might help your own self-respect is, okay, I was as fair as I could be. But fair doesn't mean I did everything he wanted. I don't know what it'll mean exactly.
Okay. So like I know this is a strange analogy, but like sometimes, like when people will have affairs, sometimes I'd love your thoughts on this, but sometimes it's not always like the best thing to tell the whole truth because sometimes it hurts the other person more to know, like sometimes you tell the truth because you want your own conscience to be cleansed, but you end up like destroying the other person. And it's like I don't know. I think I was
Mm.
talking to a friend of mine who had a one night stand at a wedding, and then was like, well, I just need to be transparent with my husband or whatever, and it devastated him. And now 2.5 years later, he's still not over it. And like, I think that he would have preferred to just not know because it was
Hmm.
really my friend who was just trying to have a clean conscience and just like get it off her chest, and she just thought things would just go back to normal. And so I think they both might have been better off. And again, I don't
They
know,
might.
this is like
They
a
might.
sticky area.
I
This
don't
is
know.
very
This is
fuzzy.
it's a sticky area, and so. But let me say another thing. Another one of the self-respect standards, you might say, is
Mm-hmm.
being true to your values.
Mm.
That's one of the four things. One of them is to be
Oh,
fair to each other, but the other, and another is to stick to your values. So, would it be? And I'm not saying what your values should be; they're your values. But would
yeah.
your values include that it would make sense to be dishonest with him about a child that he thinks is there and is going to be there for him and that he's been dreaming about, etc. Is it within your values to lie to him about that and to have to terminate the pregnancy and then say it was a miscarriage?
Okay, maybe that when you say it that way, it sounds really no, it's not. I think that
I'm not trying to
no, no,
shoot
I
you
get it.
down. This is
I have
really your business.
I hear
Your
you. I
values
hear
are.
you. No, I think that I can't lie about and say it was a miscarriage. I think that I would have to tell him what I did. But I think that telling him ahead of time feels like like I'm giving him power over what I do, which I don't believe belongs to him.
You mean because he might change your mind or he might
That he's going to hold me hostage and say that our relationship depends on, me having this baby and that it's going to become. I mean, he can't change my mind, but I think that um,
hmm, hmm.
I want to do what's right, and I guess I think again this feels like an issue about what it means to be a woman, an equal participant in society, where
Uh-huh.
I am doing what is, again, we are not married. Um, we have, we have, yeah, we're in a relationship, but like we have no, I mean, it's hard. Yes, there's
No, but
trust
I
there,
think
but like,
what I think you're trying to say in one way or another is y- the fact that you're in a relationship and you've been together for a while, the fact that you're pregnant, though that wasn't your intention, and the fact that you don't want to carry the child to term. Um, none of that, none of that is anything that anyone else, from what you're saying, really needs to be the person that makes the decision
yeah,
about. And that the relationship, the fact that you chose this one out of the whatever number of billion people there are on Earth to be with, does not necessarily mean that you have to go with what he wants.
yeah,
It's more complicated than that. It's more what do you I don't know, it's a very complicated thing, but it is, in one way, it's not complicated. I've talked to a lot of women who've been pregnant who are trying to decide what to do. And you're one of the clearest I've ever heard. You know what you personally want to do.
I really
And you
do.
want to and so you're trying to figure out, how do I bring this into the relationship with him so that I can have the life that looks exciting to me, and deal with it honestly or directly with him, right? If you're not going to lie about it.
And if he says that he doesn't want to be with me
Right.
anymore, which is possible, it is possible.
It's conceivable, though you're jumping to that, but it is conceivable.
I am jumping to that, but it is, and I mean, part of me is so angry, even just thinking about it, that like all of a sudden, my value is contingent on carrying a child. I mean, it just like, I'm feeling disgust towards him. And again, I understand a lot of this is speculative, but it's like amazing what's coming up in my body. Just thinking about how excited, like how much the nature of our relationship has changed since I've been pregnant, like, and how he relates to me differently, and and how we talk about our future differently. Like I feel, I don't know that it's objectified, but I feel again like this vehicle for some fantasy of his, and I do feel resentful, and I feel angry, and I do want to extricate.
Your resentment is based on not having had a conversation with him and not knowing for sure how he would respond to it if you actually articulate how you feel.
I have said.
You have. What have you said?
I am not going to be your fantasy baby mama. Like, I am not going to be whatever you think it's going to look like. I'm going to be the same person. And if you are into doing all of this, like blue bedroom, whatever, then that's you. But it's not me.
The whole thing.
Like, I'm just not going to do it. I don't want to do it. It's not like,
all right,
I'm
well,
going to be the same person.
But you saying that to him is a little bit of an early rehearsal. It's a very early rehearsal for the big conversation. So, you, and as being part of interpersonal skills in DBT, which I think are profoundly helpful sometimes.
Yeah.
I want you to have a conversation with me being Lucas.
Yeah.
I want you to try it. I want you to look me in the eye, because, that's one of the skills, is to be actually present and to be actually mindful and actually to look like you have a right to say what you're going to say, because I think you do have a right to say what you want to say.
Sure is.
So remember that, and I'm Lucas, and I'll try to be my own version of Lucas as I would guess Lucas might respond. Okay, so give it a try.
Charmingly chauvinistic. That's what we're doing?
Well, I don't know. You haven't given me enough description to know that for sure.
I mean, he's lovely. He's wonderful. Okay. Well, it's going to kill him. I know. I can feel it already. I don't like to. Oh.
Yeah, but but it won't kill me. But it might kill the Lucas within me. We'll find out.
Okay. I'll be. All right. So, all right, Lucas. Let me look you in the eye. Why is it so hard to look you in the eye? All right. Okay, the first thing I want to say is, Lucas, I want to take responsibility. I just want to say, first of all, this is a really hard thing for me to say. And please let me finish before you say anything, because this is really hard for me to say.
I'm listening.
Thank you. I know how much you want to be a dad. I know how much you want to be a dad and how hard it was for you to grow up without a dad. And I know how exciting it's been for you just imagining our future as parents. And I know that I have contributed to that excitement. I know that I have been, I have fed into that. And I feel like your face is already telling me you're just, hear me out.
I'm just waiting to hear you out.
Okay.
I'm waiting to hear you out. You asked me to wait,
yeah,
and I think I hear what's coming, but I don't know.
Thank you. So I've never, ever, I love our life. I love my life. I love what I've built at the firm. I love I love the way we are together, just the two of us, and I think that especially what's going on in our country, it's so important to me to not have a child, to really to use the privilege, to really take advantage and savor the privilege of being an autonomous woman that does things differently because I can choose. And it doesn't mean I don't love you. It doesn't mean I don't value everything you want. And if this is a deal breaker for you, I respect that and I understand that. And I cannot have this baby.
And Nicole, I want to say, I've held off. Let me say this though.
Yeah.
I should have known when you didn't want to get married. I should have known. All right, just be
But
quiet.
it's not even about that. It's not.
No,
it's
it isn't about
different.
that. No, but that was a crack already. That was a crack already. And now here we go. And now you don't want to have a child with me. And when you say, I love my life, I love my work, I love what I'm doing in the world, I love what's going
And
on.
I love you.
That's the one thing you didn't say until just a minute ago. You threw it into another paragraph. But I mean, how about, do you love me? I mean, is there some reason?
I do. Of course I do. I'm so sorry. No, I don't want to apologize. See, I don't want to apologize, but I, you know what? I should have said that first. You're right. I should have said that first. And I understand that you're angry, and it totally makes sense.
Angry? I've just been thinking since I was a little kid that I would have the chance to be a father, just like you said. I mean, you know me pretty well.
I know.
Yeah. So
and
it's
I understand.
kind of heartbreaking that you don't want to do that.
I understand. I'm sure that if I were in your position, I would feel just the same way. And I can't imagine what it's like. I won't pretend to. And
yeah, that's for sure.
Fuck, Charlie, I don't know what to do now because this is, you know, honestly, I just want to scream and be like, you brat. I want to be like, you brat. This is not about you, and we weren't even going to have kids. It's just happened as an accident. Like, I'm pissed off right now.
Yeah, but look, you've gone 16 weeks. I mean, you've gone 16 weeks. I mean, I haven't known all those weeks, but you've gone like 2 months knowing you're pregnant, and you've you know, I know that you're not the baby mommy type. I know that, but I figured you'd grow into it.
Oh.
I thought that you would come to like it. I mean, other people do. I mean, you sort of fall in love with your child, and I mean, and so I just thought, well, that'll probably happen. Yeah, I wish you loved the whole idea, but I know you don't love the whole idea. But I thought, you know, you and I have a lot going for us, I thought, and so we'll kind of.
And we do, and I think that we can have a wonderful life together without a baby. I
have to think about that. I mean,
Well,
I
have to think
about
this is a decision that I've made. This is something
You've
that
made this by yourself. You've made this.
Yes, I have.
You and that therapist of yours.
No, God, right? No. Actually, it was all me. It was all me. And because you know what? If I were to ever have a child, which I don't think I want to, but if I ever were to, at some time in the future, when it felt like the right thing, I would never be able to look that child in the eye with any sense of self-respect. If I did that now because I thought I should, or it was supposed to, in order to be a person that I'm proud of, I have to be a whole person. And right now, that's just not what being a whole person looks like.
I hear what you're saying. I get where you're coming from. I know you well enough to know that this makes sense to me, but I did not think it was going to go this way. I didn't even worry that it was going to go this way. I worried that maybe you wouldn't like being a mom that much.
Just
with a
that.
baby.
Just that. So then
Yeah.
what? So that I'm just an unhappy woman.
No, I was
just
worried
saddled
about that, but
down?
I thought our love would carry over into
Oh God,
having the child. But
how
you know,
naive? How fucking naive? Oh, jeez.
if
Nobody's love is that strong.
If I was carrying this baby
Oh,
and not you, I would have the baby anyway and raise it myself.
I would be thrilled. You would be welcome to it.
Well, how about you have the baby and I'll raise it?
Not a chance.
Now, is that what you call a dialectical synthesis? I
No,
mean,
oh,
you go.
stop. You know what? You go and get your own friggin' therapist. No, it's not. I'm not carrying the. Do you understand that that this is my body? This is my. You go get a surrogate. If you really want to be, but I can't be the parent. I can't be the vehicle. I can't.
Okay. Okay. I can't carry on this conversation anymore.
I understand.
That's just too much for me right now. I'll talk to you tomorrow about it.
Okay.
I'm not even going to say anything else about it right now. I'm afraid the wrong things would come out. Okay.
That's very mature of you.
Okay.
I got it. Oh fuck! I'm sorry. I am sorry.
Okay, Nicole. Let's
Oh,
time out.
Charlie,
Time
this is awful.
out. Oh. Oh.
You know what? It makes me so mad is when I feel like I don't want to apologize, and I do. And I'm like, I feel so,
Right.
I feel so guilty and ashamed, and at the same time, I feel so righteous.
I think both came through, and it's very hard for you to just stay righteous. I mean, I was, and in a way, I was a little surprised sometimes because you're so, in talking to me as Charlie on the podcast, you were so clear. I mean, and talking to me as your therapist, you were so clear about these things, but then actually mixing it up with your partner, and taking in having to deal with his feelings and his dreams and his heartaches but I think that's where the rubber meets the road. It's really hard.
That's why I just want to just lie.
I
know. I just want to lie.
I know, and you wanted to bail out of the role play. At a certain point, you called me Charlie. I thought, wait, did she forget that my name is Lucas?
I know, I did.
It was hard to be in that.
I needed help.
I know. I wanted to help you, but I was Lucas.
Oh, damn it.
I was Lucas.
I
needed help.
Really? What do I do about that? How do I show up with self-respect there?
I think you did a really good job, first of all. So in terms of
Way
how
to
do you
validate.
show up? No, I really feel that's an extremely hard conversation to have. I can remember conversations I've had to have with partners in the past that were really, really, really hard moments when I knew what I was going to say was not going to be what the partner wants. And so those are really hard to do. And I just think it's, you got ready and you did it. But when you say it was so hard, what do you think you didn't do? You think you should have just stuck to your guns as sort of more righteous about your position?
No,
and
I think it
hold
was
the line,
just.
or
I felt like I didn't know how in that moment to be like. I felt. Here's what was happening. I felt like I was feeling like I might negotiate, or like I might wait, or I might compromise on what I know I can't compromise on. That was what was coming up in me. And
so
I
in
felt
your
like
mind, you thought that you might compromise.
I might say like, okay, let's wait and I'll think about it. And I know I can't. And that's what was so vulnerable for me.
Right,
and
right,
I just
right.
like I just wanted. And so for me, getting angry and being righteous felt like a way to just protect against this any possibility, because I feel like that's how I got this far in the first place. It was like there was resistance or whatever, but then his joy and his vulnerability and all those things that I do love so much, like that's where I'm just like, okay, forget about whatever's going on for me. Like I want to get swept up in the relationship, and it's lovely, and he's lovely, and I care about him, and in some ways I feel stronger than he is, and so I melt a little bit, and the anger feels like the way to, like, I don't know, it's like armor, right? I can just stay separate. But when I let that go, I just feel somehow like, oh gosh, I'm going to lose my point of view. I'm going to lose like my conviction, and that feels very vulnerable.
When I hear that and I step back from the conversation we had, I just think that the huge challenge is for you to stay with what's important to you and let yourself actually immerse yourself in and feel that you have severely disappointed him, and that makes you vulnerable, but it doesn't change your mind. And so it isn't like you need to change things. It doesn't like you have to get angry. It doesn't mean you have to put armor on. It's like you might be able to say to him something like, I know I'm breaking your heart.
Oh,
And it breaks my heart to break your heart.
that
I
sounds
just
so
can't,
enlightened.
I can't stand it. I just, it's so painful to do this, but I know I have to do this. I mean, so somehow if you can,
To really be open and honest, to really tell the whole truth.
yeah, that you feel, that you feel you're betraying him, that you
I
feel you're,
do. I
yeah,
do
yeah, but
all of that. You're
But I
right.
think
So
it
I
was,
mean, to really say, like, I feel like it's my fault that we got this far. Because that's what I tried to start with. It's like, I know I fed into this. I know, we looked at the little like kid stores and we talked baby names. Like I did that with him.
yeah.
I was complicit, and like, I want to take responsibility for that because that was me, and I made it worse, and I am sorry for that.
Well, then there's so many things like that that you can do in a relationship without it having to turn into a child. I mean, all of us do that in a close relationship where we go along with the other person because we know it means so much to them. And you can do that. You can say, I know how much you love ice cream. So, so let's go to your favorite ice cream place every night that you want to go. I'm with you on that. But that doesn't result in a child.
Well, I did think just what he said. I thought maybe I could want it too. For a little while.
Well, no, and that's understandable. That's a sort of a ready-made view within our culture and within ourselves. Maybe biologically, maybe that's it within us. But I think that one of the things this highlights for me, Nicole, is that the in this conversation, the woman is in a very different position than the man. I can't even articulate all of it. I'm in my own skin. I only know the man's position. But it's a very different position. The man is not having to wrestle with the same issue. Yeah. This is your body. This is growing in you. This is something that's going to become your life. Yeah. And you didn't even intend it at this point. And there you are trying to maintain a love relationship with somebody who has fallen in love with this child to be. I mean, it's the man doesn't have an equivalent, parallel, exact position as that. It's a particularly vulnerable position, and also you've been trying to meet his needs, and you've been listening to and nurturing, baby names and going to look at cribs and all of this kind of stuff, and so you've been in a way going along with it. You aren't. It doesn't. It just means I mean, maybe this is why evolution created 9 months. Like you've got some time to figure this out. I mean, and at least in other countries, you can then go ahead and have an abortion during that time.
Yeah. Right.
While you're figuring it out and say, you know what, this is not for me.
Yep.
But I thought that was it was sort of heartbreaking. I mean, I thought you were doing such a good job of it that I felt as Lucas, I really was tearing up when you were talking, and I was realizing, holy shit. She's about to tell me she doesn't want to have this baby.
I felt that you felt it.
I did feel.
I felt that you felt it, and I felt like as you were gonna but when you brought in the marriage thing, I felt so guilty. I mean, and I felt angry because I felt like I was getting pigeonholed into this person that's just always disappointing him, which I do feel sometimes. Oh, that was fascinating and hard.
Which you do feel sometimes. So are you telling me there is a Lucas?
No, there's no Lucas. Wait, are we done now?
Yeah, we're done. We're done.
Okay, now we're done. Okay.
I don't know what we're done. We're done with something.
Are we done with our role play?
We're not done with our. We're not done with the podcast. We have a few more.
No, but we're
minutes
done with the role play. Okay.
We're done with the role play. Yeah.
Okay, good. So we can go back. I think in future role plays we give me a different name, so I'm not quite so confused.
Okay. Right.
No, that was fascinating. I love that we did the role play in the role play, because I think that it forced me, like what I noticed was that, like, when we were talking about it just as therapist and patient, I was able to be intellectually removed enough from the emotion of the situation that it was like almost like I was talking or explaining about it. But as soon as we entered into the role play of me with partner, then I'm like, then I suddenly felt this sense of responsibility, of anxiety, and you transformed, like that our relationship transformed so quickly, and my this feeling of not knowing, like not having the right words, not having whereas as patient, I just kind of felt like, all right, this is my session, this is my time, I know what to do, and like the dynamic here is clear. We have an established rapport. But in that role play where all of a sudden you are this person that I love, that I'm trying to navigate this delicate ground with, I just noticed how ineffective my humanity felt, which I loved, because then I feel like you were able to point back and kind of turn back to like, all right, what is your real option here? What is the real problem here? And what you offered me, which was this, okay, you don't need to bail, you don't need to like armor up or bail out. You can actually, there is a space for you to really show up like with true dignity, which is like, and with real love, which is this, I see you, darling, like and it does kill me that I'm doing this and I still have to do it, and it's both are true. I mean, and that's the real dialectic, is like, I cannot.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. I mean, I think in conversations like this, and anybody who listens to this, who's been in any long-term relationships, has had their own versions of this kind of thing. Whether it was a breakup conversation or a child conversation, or a we're going to move here, we're going to move there, or we're going to let your mother-in-law come in or not. I mean, all of these things are impossible conversations. They're really messy. And I think that one of the things is that if you're truly honest and you truly open yourself up to knowing how you feel, like in that conversation with Lucas, I keep forgetting his name. I want to call him Lyle.
I don't know why I made that up anyway.
So when you're in that conversation, if you're really true to yourself and you're really honest, and you really also stay in touch with the degree of pain that that it puts your partner through, then you're actually experiencing that you're inflicting pain.
Yes.
You're inflicting pain. And whether you want to inflict pain or not, circumstances come about where inflicting pain is part of being a true being with people. And it's just, and then, so if you can do it honestly and say, Lucas, I know this breaks your heart. I knew it would break your heart. It breaks my heart that it breaks your heart. Yeah. I'm very upset that this is true. And because of that, I've tried to think of, well, maybe it can work, but I just can't do it. I cannot do it. I am so sorry.
And you're so right. And receiving that, because I've received really bad, disappointing news where someone has, where whether it's been like we've had an agreement and then someone's like, actually, I went ahead and I changed my mind, or whatever it is, and it's devastated me. But interestingly, they've done similar to what I did, which was to get very defensive and very kind of hardened. And all I want is some recognition of just how devastating it is. But only now am I recognizing, for some reason, it's so apparent why it's so difficult to have humanity when you're hurting someone. Because then you really do, you need to feel that thing that you are responsible for causing harm. Because when we make these decisions that are never easy, we do, like, it's not calculus. It might seem rational when we're sitting there, whether it's it's something to do with finances, whether it's an employee-employer kind of thing, like it just makes more sense to do it this way. But ultimately, there's a human being on the other side, and we are hurting them. And to somehow go back and hide behind what's reasonable, and to defend ourselves with why we're right to do what we do, and to push away that person on the other side that's having an emotion, we're anesthetizing ourselves from the reality there, but
No,
to open up and say, yeah, I see you, and you're right, and I get it, and and I'm hurting you, and I see it, and I'm sorry. It takes a lot of courage to do that.
It's very hard to do that. It's very hard to do that. When we're at our very best on our game and we've actually gotten ready to do it, I think even then it's hard. But I do want to say, and just to build on one thing you already said, the decision to do a role play inside a therapy session.
Yeah.
I mean, for those who are listening who are therapists or who are patients or who are would-be therapists or whatever it is, I think in the world of therapy, when I went from being a psychoanalytic therapist for many years to a behavior therapist and then started to do role plays and started to teach things with role plays, you know, there is something that you cannot quite capture as good as a psychoanalytic therapy can be, and it can really become very alive. And of course, the transference analysis in a psychoanalytic therapy is sort of like a role play within the therapy relationship within an alliance. But there's nothing quite like having a genuine role play because it just feels different. The vulnerabilities are different. The buttons that are pushed are different, and it's more like what you're going to face in real life. And so I just think, and I want to encourage people who are therapists, dive in and do it without knowing where it's going to go. Because one of the things that blocks people from doing role plays is they think, holy cow, I don't know what I'll do. Maybe I won't do the right strategy, or I won't do the right thing. But you know what? Just do it and then do it again. I mean, if I was doing this with Nicole in an actual therapy session, we would have done this, and then we would have reflected on, gee, how did that go with Lucas?
Yeah.
And then we would have discussed about, is there a better way to do it? And then we would have done a second one. And she would have made some changes based on the first one. And then when she actually encountered Lucas, she would have already had 2 rehearsals.
Right.
And a chance to think about how messy this is and how true to yourself you want to be, but how hard that is to do. So
And
I
I
just wanted to
assume,
say
tell me
that.
if I'm wrong, but we'd probably also kind of look at what are some of the obstacles, like what's likely to get in the way, kind of a cope ahead, but like, all right, we know that he's going to be, you know, shining and smiling and full of da-da-da, and I'll probably be tired from work or whatever it is, like some sort of like, what are the barriers to my showing up authentically, telling the truth? And what might prevent, or in moments where I got defensive or I dropped out of the role play, like why did that happen, and how can we kind of tweak that? I think all of those opportunities is just like with sports visualization or anything else. The more opportunities you give yourself, or you can, I think, help your patient or whatever to really anticipate and kind of like come up with contingencies. Then, you know, even if the reality unfolds nothing like you expect, you're still feeling more confident going into the game.
You've gotten into the real water for a while, and it's different to talk about swimming than to actually try to swim.
Oh gosh,
you know,
is it ever?
Now look, we're going to stop because it's been a little over an hour, and I think that we try to keep the podcast to that so people can kind of know how long they'd be. And let me just encourage anybody who does listen to this to please leave a comment somewhere. It really, we don't know how this goes. We don't know if this is useful to you. We don't know which part of this is useful to you. We don't know if it hits the spot and is educational, or if it's interesting, or so please.
If there's
just
topics
leave a
you want us to role play on, if there's you know, any of that stuff that you're like, how would you do this? What would that look like? What about this topic? What about these kind of characters? Like, we're up to experiment on all of it. I think we're ready to make fools of ourselves.
All right.
Total love and generosity.
I've already proven that several times over.
I just volunteered you, Charlie. No. No, I think this was a lot of fun.
Well, I sang a song last, so I've already made a fool of myself for a while. When I recover, I'll do it again. All right, everybody. Be well.
Be well till next
Bye.
week. Bye.